Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we're very honored to have guest Jo Lynne Whiting. She's the chair of Boardbound by Women's Leadership Foundation. Their mission is to open more board positions to women in Colorado and beyond. Jo Lynne Whiting on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Jo Lynne?
Great, thank you.
So, are you in Denver today? Somewhere down there in Central, North? Where are you?
Aurora, Colorado.
You're in Aurora. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Very good. But if I am reading your accent right, combined with the school I saw you went to on your LinkedIn profile, it looks like you're a Texas girl. Am I wrong about that?
That's right. I grew up on the ranch that my ancestors settled 175 years ago. So,
wow. Very
yeah, cool. It was a great childhood. And my father was a rancher, and my mother was a teacher and then a homemaker. I have a younger brother who is still running the ranch now. He has about 70 horses and 350 cattle, so about 1,000 acres. So
very cool.
A lot of places to roam.
Can you still make money?
She wouldn't want me leaving her out.
Oh, go ahead.
I also have a younger sister that is a teacher there in the local area.
What town was this? Where'd you grow up?
It's called Bells, Texas, Bells, like bells ringing.
So you went to Texas Wesleyan, right? I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Probably went there on scholarship, I'm guessing.
Well, I had a small scholarship, and I also worked during college. And my father sold a calf each year for each of us to save up money for us to go to college. Nice. So it was great. I really loved going to college. I ended up English major, math minor, but I got a teacher certificate because in the rural area that I was at, the men were ranchers and the women were teachers. So that was the thing. But I didn't really want to teach. And so that led me into coming to Colorado finally, because after I graduated, my college roommate had lived in Colorado for a year with her husband, and they loved it. So I'd heard good things about it. And then I investigated the university. I got accepted into the PhD program at University of Colorado in Boulder.
Nice.
On educational research.
Ooh.
Which was sort of a prestigious thing in that narrow field, but I felt like I did not have any money left for my graduate school, so I needed to work a year and qualify for in-state tuition. And that's how I got started at what was called Mountain Bell at that time. I was a service rep, a person you call when you're ordering telephone service.
Okay. All right. So working and you did that for a year before you started school again, or how long did you do that?
Well, what happened is at the end of that year, I was offered a promotion.
Okay.
And the reason I was offered a promotion is the Bell system at that time was very well organized, and it was in the computer that I had a math minor and that I'd had one computer class. So I was offered a promotion to a computer programmer, and so I had to decide. And so I really gave it a lot of thought, but decided that I would stay with business and I would switch to an MBA, which I ended up, it took me 10 years actually, from the time of my undergraduate to my MBA, because while I was working, I put my career first. And during that time, I did progress in my career. And so I'd take incompletes if I needed to concentrate on a project at work, and then I'd have to go back. And so, but I did get my MBA then, and did decide to pursue business.
Were you living in Boulder the whole time?
No, I
No.
moved to Denver.
Oh, you lived in Denver. Okay.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Okay. Going to school in Boulder, but was Boulder like the hip, cool
No,
town it is
it
now?
was. Boulder would have been hip and cool, but I ended up, when I switched to MBA, I ended up getting University of Colorado at Denver for my MBA.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because that was right across the street from where I worked. So
Oh, I see.
much easier.
Traffic back then was a little easier than it is now, I think, maybe, huh?
Yeah, a whole lot different. Back in the early 70s, when I worked downtown, it was totally dead. I ended up taking the bus to work for about a decade or so. And
Interesting.
but it was I would sometimes work late when I remember being waiting for a bus at 7 o'clock at night, and nothing was going on in downtown Denver.
Wow. Interesting. You know, my grandfather was an oil field worker and bootlegger from Oklahoma, and they used to run Coors beer from Colorado down into Oklahoma back in the day. If you could get Coors, somewhere else, that was a big deal.
It really was. I remember.
Okay, so you're off to the races. Your career is progressing. Talk to us a little bit about that first time you reached the executive level, VP level. Share a little bit of that as you kind of move us through your career, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and actually, I benefited from the EEOC consent decree with AT&T.
Mm.
So AT&T had the largest consent decree in history, and it went from 1973 to 1978.
Okay.
So I started as a service rep. I got promoted to management after the year, and that was before the consent decree. And then the consent decree happened. And so what happened is AT&T probably didn't discriminate any more than other companies, but they just kept good records. So
Okay.
if you took an entry level test, and if you made over a certain level when you were a woman, you started as a service rep. You still did good, but below that level, you started as an operator.
Okay.
If you were a man, you took the very same test, and if you made over that level, you started as a manager. And
Wow.
if you were below that, you started as an installer repair person.
I see.
Installer repair person paid a lot more than an operator, and a manager paid a lot more than a service rep.
Wow.
So that was a fun time, because when I've gone to break before that, the conversation tended to be family or kids, husbands, what people were doing. And then after that, when women said, aha, I could really have a career, you could see the energy switch so much.
Really?
So many women went back to school, really became serious about their career. And so then I was also promoted to middle management. I ended up taking a job in Detroit, Michigan for part-time. Yeah.
Grew up in Texas and then lived in Colorado. And all of a sudden you're in Detroit. That's a whole new world.
Yeah, and it was a suburb of Detroit, but it was AT&T assessment, where we evaluated people that were at lower management going to middle management.
Okay.
So I learned a lot. I traveled around the country, and
married
I think
married at the time or no?
Yes. I'm married in my early career to Frank, who I'm still with and love very much. So
that's awesome.
Still a big part of my life. So that's nice to have a partner.
Very good. Very, very good. How long you been married? Do you mind me asking?
Well, let's see. What would that be?
I love how you're having to pause a little bit.
It's going to be about, we'll be celebrating our golden anniversary within a couple of years. So.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. So he's with you when you go to Detroit or that area?
No. He always kept our home in Colorado.
Oh.
And so I was in the Detroit area for about 6 months, and I I guess this is one of the lessons you talk about is being willing to grab those opportunities when they
Mm-hmm.
come.
Mm-hmm.
So after that in my career, I later took a job in San Diego for 2 years. Later, I took a job in Seattle for 2 years. After I left my career at US West, I ended up consulting in Europe, Singapore, Australia. Spent a year as an expat in a telephone company in Australia. So part of that willingness to prioritize my career and take those opportunities, but Frank always chose to keep our home, which we're still in, to keep. I traveled a lot back and forth. He traveled back and forth, but we we
Yeah.
telephoned every night, of course, but
Yeah.
then commuting a lot on airplanes.
Are you telling me that you guys have had the same house down in that area in Aurora for many, many, many years?
Since the early 80s.
Woo! Okay, I'm not even going to ask you what you paid for that because I don't want to. You're going to make me. You're going to make me envy you if I ask you. So don't even tell me. Don't tell me.
Gone
Okay,
up a
cool.
little.
Yeah, yeah. Just probably a little less than its valued at today, I'm guessing. Okay, so awesome career. I mean, awesome career as you're moving along. Did the promotions came from your leadership skills and all of that and your hard work, I'm assuming? The leadership part, the management part, do you think did you get that from your mom or dad or both, or was that just you?
You know, I think my parents, I mean, my father, I remember, I mean, he would work from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
And in my early career, I always identified more as my mother, with my mother growing up, because she's the one that invested a lot of time with me because my
Mm-hmm.
father was generally working.
Mm-hmm.
She helped my leadership skills, I think, because she gave me a lot of confidence and was very interested in me. I mean, every day when I would come home from school, she'd spend about a half hour or so debriefing the day. She
Really?
knew all 30 students in my school, which tended to not have a whole lot of turnover through the years. We'd talk about what happened, you know, dilemmas, tensions, how I felt about the teacher, or how my interplay with the other kids, and she would talk through what ifs with me, what I might do differently, what I might do. So that
Awesome.
all I think
That's great.
was foundational skills, you
That's
know,
great.
that I later called upon. But
Mm-hmm.
then I realized I was more like my father than I realized, because in my career, I would often wake up at 4:30 in the morning because I wanted some quiet time because my day was totally booked from definitely 8 to 5, later 7:30 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And but having that quiet time to think and work and really plan and strategize was useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I remembered how my father always getting up so early and having such a strong work ethic. So I guess I learned from both of them.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. And so then at some point you started landing board positions. Walk us, kind of walk us into,
So, okay,
yeah.
getting to middle management was one thing, but then there was a little, I'd had a great job. I had a job working for a vice president. I was financial analyst, sort of looking over 3 profit units that he managed.
Okay.
And then, so that was a great opportunity. But then I felt sort of stuck because I'd been there a while.
All right.
So I made a change and I went to manage payphones. Now, this was in the 80s and we knew cellular was coming. We knew that wasn't the most popular area in the world to be in, but I wanted line experience.
Oh.
I had gotten to middle management mainly through staff, and I felt it was very important that I get line and operations experience. And the part I liked about I had payphones for 7 states, and it had a profit and loss center. And when I first went there, we were at the lowest level. I loved the benchmarking because in the Bell system, we could benchmark with the other telcos, and we were at the lowest, and we got up to the top half, probably the top third by the time I left in 2 years. And so I loved having those profit metrics, customer satisfaction metrics, and a large work team that that reported to me. But it wasn't the most popular area, in the company. And I think that's so I took a sidestep to that to get that experience.
Okay.
But later, when I talked to executive recruiters, they valued that job a lot more than it had been valued internally. Because I did manage a profit center. I had a balance sheet. I could talk about all of those metrics and how it came together. So after that, I was my first upper management job was in strategic planning for U.S. West. This was after the divestiture of AT&T, and 3 belt operating companies were brought together to form U.S. West in the mid-'80s. And so I got to be report to the executive vice president, report to CEO. That's where I had a lot of interaction with the executive team and help prepare for board meetings of that company, which was
that's your first
100.
Fortune 100 and first experience at the VP level, interacting with okay, great. All right. Very good. Yep.
But after a while, I decided again I needed line experience. So this time I went to Yellow Pages, and we had the Yellow Pages within the 14 states, where we were the major market leader.
Okay.
But we had also acquired Transwestern Publishing in San Diego, which was a competitive Yellow Pages company. And so when I went to San Diego and had that job for a couple of years as vice president of marketing, I was involved as we sold that company. When I went there, the first day I reported the job after I'd moved to San Diego, I was asked to help put together a presentation to the U.S. West executive team as to why we should not close down the unit. So that was a little disturbing, but we put together a plan, and as a matter of fact, we did get to break even. A lot of that, one of the secrets I learned there is be honest with employees. They had not wanted to share with the employees what the financial situation was, afraid that people would get too discouraged. But really, as we began having a lot of information sharing of exactly where we were at, where we needed to be, a lot of engagement is how we get there. I ended up going on, I remember flying to Houston to help with the biggest sale the company ever had by proving how many calls this plumbing and repair company got. So that was great. And we were able to invite the CEO out to celebrate us being positive.
Very cool.
And later I went to U.S. West Direct, the Yellow Pages company, as a strategy lead. And I was involved in the sale of Transwestern, but because we had gotten in better financial shape, we were able to make a very favorable sale. Later, Transwestern Publishing sold, after we sold it, because that team went ahead and did great work. They ended up getting the highest EBITDA return when they sold, 16 times EBITDA, which for the industry was the highest.
Okay. Congratulations. Very good.
But so besides Yellow Pages, I was in charge. I was I was the officer of the company in charge of local markets on the telco side.
Okay.
Working in 14 states as we were bringing in cellular and broadband.
I love how your career touches almost every function, right? Whether it's operations, finance, marketing, sales. I mean, really, the only thing you haven't mentioned is HR, but you've been in management the whole time. So that is HR really by nature, right? So you touched almost every function as you're moving up, which probably that just made you a much better well-rounded executive overall, having come through several different functions.
Yeah, and you know what? That was partly by design. I had
Good,
to seek that from time to time. A
good.
few things happened, luckily, but I remember early on, I read a book. It was called Games Your Mother Never Taught You. It was one of those early books about women succeeding in business. And
Okay,
it talked about make your career path to be a CEO.
okay.
And you don't have to tell everyone that, but do it and look at every job you have along the way from a CEO perspective. So even if when I was the service rep, why was that job important to the investors? Why
Mm,
was that job important to the CEO? How did that help with retention of customers and revenue and that sort of thing? And so if you're going to be a CEO, I figured you needed to know all those different functions you just named. And so while I did not become the CEO of that company, I did become an officer. And I do think that advice of getting a well-rounded career, both with the market leader, with a competitive upstart, helped me.
for sure. And so then, did you start thinking, hey, in I don't know, 2010, are we thinking I'm going to retire, but then you got pulled into some boards? How did you decide what to do next? And how did you get to, what you're doing now and lead and kind of walk us into that? Like, were you thinking,
Yeah.
I'm retired, I'm done? And because, as the listeners will soon understand, you are the chair of the board of directors, right, for Boardbound by Women's Leadership Foundation. And I just want to kind of walk us into, like, how did you get into that? How did that
Yeah.
start? And go ahead.
All right. Well, the reason I left US West is because a man named Joe Nancio and Phil Anschutz, it was the person behind the chair of the board at Quest, decided to acquire US West.
Okay.
And so I didn't feel good about that acquisition. And fortunately, I was in a position that I could choose to leave. I was on that defined pension plan, which is a wonderful benefit, but it's sort of a stair step. You're either at you get nothing or you get a pension. And I was just at that point at about 50 where I qualified for the pension and I was able to leave. I felt really badly for a lot of the people that I respected that were sort of trapped, in that situation, but I wasn't.
Okay. Did you have
And
stock? Did you have stock, a lot of stock too, or no?
I had a lot of stock, and without knowing it, the best thing about me leaving when I did is I was in my 401k. Everything the company had matched was in Quest stock,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I was able to sell it at about $50. Within that next year, it was down to
Yeah.
40, 30, 20. It got as low as $2.
Woo. Okay.
And so if I had stayed, I would have watched a
Mm,
lot of my savings, as unfortunately a lot of other people did.
mm.
Their savings were trapped there and were left. But I didn't realize that was one of the that was the smartest thing about leaving. And so I took a little time. I had been, a real 60 plus hour week person. So I took a little time with this
Good.
thought of living a life of leisure
Good.
and did that for a while. We traveled a lot and took some time.
Nice.
But
That's
after
good.
a couple of years, I've been consulting again and again for some entrepreneurial ventures in technology. And then that's when I did a lot of the consulting internationally and loved it. And then after about a decade, I decided, you know what? I do love Colorado. My husband's in Colorado. I'd really like to spend more time there. So that's where I still consult, but I choose the projects that I want to be involved in now. And mainly then I looked around for where I could make a difference.
Okay.
And I was I felt really good when I was at US West because when I started, I told you that I started as a service rep, and that was at the time of the consent decree. But there was one woman at middle management, less
And
than
how
1%.
how many employees? Yeah. Do you remember how many employees total at that
Oh,
time?
at the highest, it was 70,000, I think. But
70,000.
at that point, I can't recall exactly. But when I left, we were at 42% at middle management.
Okay.
We were at 27% women as officers. We had a woman as one of the top 5 named executive officers, as well as a Hispanic man. So I had been very involved after the consent decree had stopped. There was a little bit of a stagnation for women.
Okay.
And I was president of US West Women and Employee Resource Group within the organization. And we did a lot with the CEOs and with the officer team to really make a difference in general and for women of color in particular. And I was very proud at the end of that time that we had twice as many women on our board and twice as many women as officers as the Fortune 500. And women made 84 cents on the dollar of what men make. And
That's what it was when you left, or that's
when I left, which is very, very good, because you realize today, 20 years later, it's at 82 cents nationally.
Yeah, I did not know that. You're kidding me. I'm always stunned by those stats. I
Let
can't
me
even
show you one other
believe it.
thing. Is this showing up right? 59 cents.
I think so. Yeah. Yep. I can see it.
Cents.
Yeah.
So in the early 70s, I got this little button, and it's 59 cents on the dollar. And that's what women made when I started the company.
Well, we haven't made much progress then. If it was at 80,
59 cents to 82 cents nationally is good, but
yeah, but it was 80. It was 84 when you left, and it's gone down.
Well, what I'm saying, it was 84 at US West when I left, which was quite a bit higher. I think for the national at that time, it was about 73 cents. So we were about 11 cents higher than the national average. And the national average went up from 73 to 82 over the last 20 years. So we're at still have a big gap. But so when I felt really good about those steps forward while I was in my career, and I thought about, you know what? I've been away from Colorado. I need to reconnect in Colorado. Is there some way we could create that magic and get make that progress? And that's when I looked around, and I saw after studying that the real glass ceiling for women at that point was getting on boards.
Okay.
So in Colorado in 2011, we only had 7% of the board positions of Colorado public companies held by women.
Wow. So, what was it? Do you remember what it was nationally then?
We were a little bit below national.
Okay.
So then I wanted to get involved. And so I looked around to see who was making a difference, and I found Women's Leadership Foundation, Boardbound by Women's Leadership Foundation.
Okay.
And they had a board program that it was in its infancy. And they'd begun the first study. So I was very interested in that, and I got involved first in saying, okay, but you know what? There's a lot of women already that are qualified that aren't yet on boards. So it's not just board prep, it's really the demand side. And how do we work with the CEOs here in Colorado to make progress and make Colorado a leader? And so we started CEOs for Women on Boards as an initiative within Boardbound by Women's Leadership Foundation. And just last week, we updated our study, and we're now at 19%. So 7% to 19%.
Major improvement. Still got a long way to go.
But it's still, you ask how we compared nationally, and that's a couple of percentage points below nationally.
Mm.
but partly because we have a lot of oil and gas and natural resource companies,
Okay.
and we have a lot of technology companies, and both of those tend to have fewer women. But
Mm.
I'm very proud of the natural resources companies. They doubled the proportion of women on their boards within the last couple of years. And we also, when we started, only 44% of the companies in Colorado had even one woman on their board.
And
And
how?
now it
Yeah.
is the majority. It's about 80%.
How did you?
So,
What were some of the tactical steps? Are you like calling CEOs? Are you having relationships with CEOs and you're challenging them to say, "Hey, I saw you had a board seat open. That needs to be a woman on that seat." I mean, how did you do that? How'd
well,
you?
we tried positive reinforcement and
Okay,
we tried success cases.
I see.
So we worked. The first thing we did, well, first of all, we send a letter of congratulations to anyone that adds a woman to the board.
Okay,
So, if you add a woman to your board, we care, we're noticing, we applaud you for that. We're excited about that. So there is some of that. We also have gotten articles in the paper every year about where we are on the study. What I just shared with you, though, is fresh off the press, not
okay.
yet reported to the news. But the main thing we did is we worked with some CEOs, Dave Lineker of Remax, Jerry Stead of IHS Market, at the time Gary Goldberg of Newmont Mining. All of them had women on their boards, 2 or 3 women on their boards.
Okay,
And Newmont has gone up to 5 now. So, and Newmont has a woman board chair from
nice,
UK, Maureen
nice,
Doyle.
nice.
So here they are in gold mining around the world, and it's a non-traditional company, but they've been very successful, and they've done it with diversity. So we asked then CEOs to invite their fellow CEOs and board directors to meetings of about 30 to 50. So we would meet, would have,
I
would
see.
would ask some of them to share what happened, how they accomplished what they did. And then we would work with we'd have table discussions and we'd have those that didn't yet have people on the board. We tried to create a safe space, because we assumed they wanted to, and that it was just a matter of knowing how and being able to do it readily. We started a program called Board Connect. Some of them told us, well, I don't know who to, women. And if they're a large company, they can hire a search firm and hopefully they will ask the search firm to be sure they get diverse candidates. But a lot of companies, even fairly good sized companies, don't do that.
Mm.
A lot of times it's a network.
It's a network.
And so we asked to become part of that network. And we have a program called Board Connect. And so we're not a full search firm. I know you understand that
Yeah,
business very well.
yeah.
But what we do is we say, tell us what you're looking for, and we will introduce you to women with those qualifications. And then you can take it further in, with the interview and your
Do you reach out? Do you
selection.
reach out to CEOs that you don't have a relationship when you find out that they're looking for a board seat? Let's say you don't know them.
We
You reach
have, but
you reach out and
it
say,
a lot of times they don't announce that they have a board
"Yeah,
seat
right, yeah,
open. So we just tried to help get the word out. And we also have talked to a few search firms and said, if you are interested in some additional candidates, we'd love to help you.
okay,
And although we focus in Colorado, we're part of a national network. There's a group called Ion Women that is affiliation of about 8 other regional organizations like ourselves focusing on this.
mm,
We're part of the 30% coalition nationally,
okay,
which is a lot of investors and other groups. I have to give credit to investors. The fact that a lot of investors have looked at the research that companies perform better when they have women on their boards, and have started asking questions of, well, why aren't you applying this? I think it's made a huge difference.
By the way, can I ask a question right there? One of the things that popped into my head when I was studying the website and studying
Uh-huh,
you, and I saw the stats, like, you have some great stats on your website
right.
where it says, hey, right here, it shows that if you have a diversified board, they perform
Yeah.
better, blah, blah, blah. You know what I asked myself? I said, but why? Why though? Is it because if you have a more diversified board and women on the board, that helps them make better decisions? They create different thought processes. Why? I guess I'm just wondering
Yeah,
why. I
yeah.
mean, I thought that was a fair question. I was like, okay, well, this is cool, but why is that happening?
Why is that? Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, part of it is diversity in general.
Okay.
I went to the Center for Creative Leadership in uh, Colorado Springs, and
Okay.
they one of the things they do is they have you. Uh, if you have a larger team, it makes a better decision than one person.
Okay.
And if that team has diverse voices with different
Yeah.
perspectives, you make a better decision than you
Yeah.
would. So part of it is general diversity. But the other things that we found is that the effort norm of the whole board goes up if a woman joins.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if a woman joins the board, she's gonna take it very seriously. She's gonna really value that. It may not feel as clubby to her because she may be a little more independent. Uh, so she will ask good questions, and as she asks good questions, the the whole dynamics. The conference board has done a study that said the whole dynamics change. The men's effort norm goes up too, and everyone is more engaged.
You know,
Did you know that there's 40% fewer financial restatements if you have just one woman on your board?
why?
Because
Why?
they
Why?
ask questions and they don't mind asking questions. Some people say that women might be a little better at speaking truth to power.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
And so,
I'll tell you what I formulated as my own answer to the why. When I was
uh-huh,
thinking about it, my own answer to the why this morning was, I thought to myself, okay, well, a lot of these boards where it's like, okay, I'm going to hire my buddy Johnny because I know Johnny's on the board, and Fred. Yeah, me and Fred would play golf together. He's on the board, and then you got like 5 dudes sitting around a table that all think alike, and they
yeah,
don't really challenge each other, and they're just like, hey, cool, we're having a board meeting, and then let's go to happy hour afterwards, right? Like that does a lot of good.
yeah.
I thought,
And I would say overall boards have gotten more serious.
okay,
It probably helped after the Sarbanes-Oxley,
yeah, right,
that
mm-hmm.
there was a more expectation that first of all the CEO sign off on the financials and that the board gets. So we
Right.
love the National Association of Corporate Directors. We're glad that Colorado has a very active chapter
Very good.
in that group, and they are really working all the time to help. We encourage the people that go through our corporate boardbound program
Mm-hmm.
to also take advantage of the NACD, National Association of
Okay.
Corporate Directors.
I think the other thing I was going to mention as to my own personal answer to why was I just related it to my own marriage, and the fact that, I can't tell you just how many times I will say, well, Kim, what do you think about this? And
Mhm.
often she will have a view that I just hadn't thought about, that for whatever reason, I don't know.
Right.
She looked at it differently from a different angle,
Exactly.
and it really just will help me make a more balanced decision. Now, I'm not saying I agree with her every time I ask her what her opinion is, but
Sure.
quite often, if I'm talking to her about something, I come to a more balanced approach. Like, balance is the word I'm using. I don't know. There's better words,
Uh-huh.
but so I was relating it to that, because I rarely will I make, even today for Riderflex, while
Uh-huh.
I have a great team and all of that. If I'm making a big decision as a CEO, I still go to Kim and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah. No, I think that's very much the case.
Yeah, yeah. It helps you look at things from a different perspective. Okay, cool. I was wondering how you were going to answer that, because I see all
Mhm.
these stats and I think they're great. And I was wondering on the whys. So very good. Okay, so is this a nonprofit foundation? How does this? What's the business
Yeah,
model?
so Boardbound Women's Leadership Foundation is organized as a 501c3.
Okay.
So it is a nonprofit, and we really appreciate the support of the people that pay a fee for our corporate Boardbound program, and then also our donors. So
What
that is great.
Okay, can you tell me? Can you share donors versus people paying the fee for the program? What does that
It's
look like?
about half and half.
How
And
much? How much of your job as chair is out there raising money? Is that
not nearly enough. You know, we really haven't focused on it from as much as we should. We are trying to do that more. But a lot of what we have is the value of a great network.
okay?
So we were talking about networks on boards, but we have mentors in this state. We have people that are on corporate boards that volunteer to mentor our participants.
I
We
see.
have a lot of in-kind support. But we do realize that we could be much more successful if we focus a little bit more on fundraising. So
Let me ask you.
we're doing that.
Let me ask you a couple of advice questions here because I know we have about 10 minutes left, and I could talk to you probably for another 4 hours. But I want to hit you with this. First-time board member, they just got their first board seat, whether it's male or female. They just got their first board seat. What advice are you giving that listener today?
First of all, be sure you really understand the company. You understand it from everything the company says, their own reports. You understand it from the investor's perspective. You understand it from customers and competitors' perspective. So the more you can benchmark how your company is performing versus its competitors, then the more insightful you'll be. One of the things is that's often difficult when an executive accepts their first board position is you're no longer operating. So, you know, you have to respect that the CEO and their leadership team is responsible for bringing in the results. But what you need to do is look at it at a very strategic level. Is the company prepared for the future? Is the company aware of all of their risk? Have they, just by asking probing questions, are you confident that they've really thought from different angles about how to manage the risk and how to take advantage of their opportunities? So I guess the thing is realize your shift and role and then also understand what your responsibilities are in governance. You want to support your CEO. You want to support that team. You want them to be successful, especially if you're starting out with a smaller entrepreneurial company. You know, you really need to be playing that role. But you also have a responsibility to the investors, and you need to be sure that difficult questions are asked. And if you have the courage to, if you see it differently than what the CEO does or what the other directors do, be sure that's at least surfaced for discussion.
Very good. How about a couple of traits that you have seen in excellent CEOs that you've worked with, and maybe a couple of bad things you've seen with CEOs? Anything you want to share?
Well, some great CEOs. Back at US West, Jack McAllister was our founding CEO when we came together as three companies.
Okay.
He was so collaborative and so, well, he was definitely at the forefront for diversity. He built a strong team. It was really great. Dick McCormick was his successor. Then Saul Trujillo, who I still keep in touch with and respect a great deal. He was successful at US West and has gone on to be the CEO of a much larger company, Telstra in Australia.
Okay.
And he now is on quite a few boards and making a big difference on that.
If you had to rank, if you had to rank vision, let's call it vision and strategy. Let's put that the same.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to put vision and strategy or the selection and management of the team, if you had to force rank those, which one makes them the most successful? If you had to force rank them, vision and strategy or the selection and
You know,
management of the team?
it is hard. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's tough,
I
isn't it?
know a lot of people say you've got to pay attention to the selection of the team.
Yeah.
And you can have a great vision, but if you don't have the team that can really execute it, you're not going to succeed.
Yep.
So, but on the other hand, you can be turning out and doing what you've been doing very well. And if you don't have a strategic view for the future, you can
Yep.
fail.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Totally agree. It's nice to have both, right?
yeah.
Let me ask you two more questions. We're almost done here. If you could call your, and I asked Barbara the same questions. So if you could call your 21-year-old self, I'm guessing, I don't know, you were probably 2021 coming out of Texas Wesleyan, I'm guessing somewhere in there. If you could call that young lady on graduation day at Texas Wesleyan and tell her anything, if you could go back in time and make that phone call, what would you tell her?
Well, I think a lot of what I would say is to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. For me, I mentioned that business was not my comfort zone. I mean, when I was in college, I sort of thought, it had to be a nerd or maybe a capitalist pig to want to go into business, but then when I got into business and I loved it and I saw that it can accomplish a great deal of good and get out of your comfort zone. We talked about mind versus staff, get out of this country into another country. I learned so much by working internationally. One of the things we haven't mentioned is I helped found and start a home health company,
That's right.
which
Let's talk about that. Yep.
we successfully sold after 5 years. And
Nice.
so that was something I'd never done, but that was a good thing. So I think a lot of us, and I think women, for myself and for other women, I would say, really think about what occupation you want. I mean, if you're passionate about an occupation that mainly women hold, great, pursue it. But have you really considered tech? Have you really considered software development? Hey, have you looked at the pay of these different jobs?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's the only factor, but we talked about that. Right now we're at 82 cents a dollar. About half of that pay gap is because of differences in industry and occupation.
I see.
So think about that. The other thing, I guess, be willing to pour your heart and soul in it. And if you're going to be successful, I think that commitment is what has to come through. But I would probably, one thing, if I were looking back, I would try to smell the roses a little bit more along the way. It's a delicate balance, but I think, just really appreciating how wonderful life is. And every moment is something that you need to stay grounded. And not, I guess one thing that I mentioned Frank earlier, and at one point in my career where it was not progressing as much as I wanted, and I was very discouraged. And he said, you know what? I love you the same if you're working at McDonald's or you're an executive.
Cool. Yeah, that's
and
cool.
That was nice to hear and nice to know that even though you do pour a lot of energy into this executive role and into this success that you want to have with the nonprofit that I'm working on now, it's not your identity. Who you are as a person is even more important than all of that.
That's special. I,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. One of the things that I love about you is that you could, like, I'm, I'm just assuming you and Frank could just travel the world right now. You wouldn't have to do anything if you didn't want to. You could just be like, okay, hey, we're just gonna
Yeah.
go and just relax. I'm gonna sit on the beach every day, whatever. Like, you could do that,
Right.
but here you are still giving back, and your passion around wanting to teach and mentor is so strong still today. Like, I feel like if you couldn't do that, you would be lost, right? Because that's just who you are. Like, I have to teach and mentor and coach and lead and help. And the fact,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
that's true. It's very important to me. I mean, I think one of your questions was, what do you wake up thinking about? I wake up thinking about how we're going to move this needle to get more women on boards. But
You're doing a
I
good job.
also think that it was important. I told you I took 2 years of leisure.
Hmm.
I forced myself not to be so goal oriented because I felt like I needed that for balance.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important from time to time to just stop and reflect and say, okay, in my life right now, where do I focus?
Where do I focus? By the way, I love how you've been around the world, and at the end of the day, it's about Colorado.
Right. We're going to be number one. We will
Yeah.
be.
You're doing a great job. Congratulations on everything you're doing there at Boardbound, and such a wonderful career, wonderful human being. We need more Jo Lynnes walking around on the planet. We'll be just fine, right?
Oh, well, thank you very, very much. It's been great.
I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Thank you, Jo Lynne. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.